Maya Chen's fingers were numb from the morning frost as she arranged the last of her wilted daisies in their makeshift bouquets. The cardboard box that served as her flower stand sat crooked on the sidewalk outside Meridian Tower, its corners softened by weeks of rain and wear. Each flower had been carefully salvaged from the dumpster behind Rosewood Florist the night before, blooms deemed too imperfect for paying customers, but still holding threads of beauty for those willing to look closer. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The glass facade of the office building reflected her small frame, all sharp angles and threadbare clothes, against the backdrop of rushing professionals in their pressed suits and polished shoes. She pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, trying to make herself invisible while still hoping someone might notice her flowers. The morning rush was her only chance to make enough for dinner, maybe even save $1 or $2 toward the medicine her grandmother desperately needed. Maya had been standing outside Meridian Tower for 3 weeks now, ever since Mrs. Patterson from the corner market told her that rich people worked in the tall buildings downtown. Each morning she would wake before dawn in the cramped studio apartment she shared with her grandmother, carefully count the coins in the old coffee tin they kept hidden under the loose floorboard, and walk the 40-minute journey to this street corner that had become her world. Her grandmother, Lynn, had raised her since Maya was 7, after her parents died in a car accident that left her orphaned and afraid. Lynn had been a seamstress then, her fingers swift and sure as they guided fabric through her ancient sewing machine. But arthritis had stolen that grace, and now her hands were gnarled and painful, unable to hold needle or thread for more than a few minutes at a time. The medical bills had eaten through their savings like acid through paper, and the monthly rent on their tiny apartment consumed what little remained of Lynn's disability check. Maya clutched a small bouquet of rescued carnations as the morning crowd thickened around her. She had learned to read the faces of the passers-by, to spot the ones who might slow their pace, whose eyes might soften at the sight of her modest display. Most walked past without seeing her at all, their phones pressed to their ears, their minds already climbing the floors of the tower toward meetings and deadlines and problems that seemed so much larger than a teenage girl with flowers. The carnations in her hand had seen better days. Their white petals were tinged with brown at the edges, and one stem had snapped near the base, held together only by Maya's careful wrapping with a piece of thread she had pulled from her worn jacket. But she had arranged them with the same attention her grandmother had once given to hemlines and buttonholes, and from a distance they almost looked like something you might find in a real flower shop. A woman in a navy blazer approached, her heels clicking against the sidewalk with the rhythm of someone who knew exactly where she was going. Maya stepped forward, hope blooming in her chest like the flowers she carried. "Fresh flowers, miss. Only $3 for a beautiful bouquet." The woman's gaze flicked over Maya, taking in the second-hand sneakers with the hole near the big toe, the jacket that was 2 sizes too large, the box of flowers that looked like they had been rescued from someone else's trash. Her expression tightened with the kind of disgust reserved for things that didn't belong in her carefully curated world. "Get away from me," she snapped, pulling her purse closer to her body as if Maya might snatch it. "This is a business district, not a place for begging. Someone should call security." The words hit Maya like a slap, but she had learned not to flinch. She stepped back against the wall, making herself small again, and watched the woman disappear through the revolving doors of Meridian Tower. The carnations felt heavier in her hand, their beauty suddenly fragile and foolish. The morning wore on with a parade of rejection. Some people ignored her completely, their eyes sliding past her as if she were part of the architecture. Others offered pitying looks but no money, their sympathy apparently sufficient payment for their clear consciences. A security guard from the building emerged twice to tell her she couldn't stay there, but each time he was called away before he could follow through on his threats. By 10 o'clock, Maya had sold exactly nothing. Her feet ached from standing on the unforgiving concrete, and the autumn wind cut through her thin jacket with surgical precision. She was debating whether to pack up her flowers and try a different corner when she noticed him. He was walking slowly, unlike everyone else who seemed to move with the urgency of people late for something important. His suit was expensive but not flashy, charcoal gray with a subtle pattern that spoke of quality rather than ostentation. His hair was dark with threads of silver at the temples, and his face carried the kind of quiet authority that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. But it was his eyes that caught Maya's attention. While everyone else looked through her or past her, He was looking directly at her, taking in her flowers, her cardboard stand, her carefully arranged display with something that might have been interest. Daniel Blackwood had built Meridian Corporation from nothing, transforming a small consulting firm into one of the city's most respected companies over the course of 15 years. He was used to being recognized, to having doors opened for him and paths cleared before he even knew he needed them. The 43rd floor of Meridian Tower belonged to him, along with the corner office that looked out over the entire city like a kingdom spread at his feet. This morning, like every morning for the past month, he had taken the stairs instead of the elevator. His doctor had recommended more exercise, and Daniel had discovered that the 20-minute climb gave him time to think, to prepare for the day ahead without the constant ping of his phone or the urgent whispers of his assistant. It was during these climbs that he made his best decisions, his mind clear and focused in a way that the executive suite never quite allowed. But today, something had made him take a different route to the building. Instead of entering through the parking garage as usual, he had walked from his downtown apartment, choosing to breathe the morning air and observe the city coming to life around him. It was a luxury he rarely afforded himself, this simple act of walking among the people whose lives intersected with his company in ways both obvious and hidden. He had noticed the girl immediately, not because she was conspicuous, but because she was trying so hard not to be. She stood pressed against the wall of his building like a shadow, her flowers arranged with a care that spoke of desperate hope. Daniel had seen. There was nothing condescending in his manner, no trace of the disgust she had seen in the woman's face earlier. "I think they're perfect exactly as they are," he said, selecting a small bouquet of mixed flowers that Maya had wrapped in a piece of newspaper. "How much for this one?" $3? Maya whispered, hardly daring to believe that someone was actually going to buy her flowers. Daniel reached into his wallet and pulled out a $20 bill, placing it gently in Maya's outstretched palm. "Keep the change," he said. "What's your name?" "Maya," she managed, staring at the money in her hand as if it might disappear if she looked away. "I'm Daniel. It's nice to meet you, Maya. I work in this building, so I'll probably see you around." He took the flowers and walked toward the entrance of Meridian Tower, leaving Maya standing on the sidewalk with $20 clutched in her fist and hope flowering in her chest for the first time in weeks. She didn't know that Daniel Blackwood was the CEO of the company that owned the building, didn't know that his annual salary could have solved every problem in her life 10 times over. All she knew was that someone had seen her, had spoken to her like she mattered, had paid for her flowers without making her feel like she was accepting charity. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of small victories. The $20 had given Maya confidence, and somehow that confidence made other people notice her too. She sold 3 more bouquets before noon, enough to buy groceries for the week and maybe even pick up her grandmother's prescription from the pharmacy. As she packed up her remaining flowers, Maya found herself looking up at the tower that stretched into the cloudy sky above her. Somewhere in that building, Daniel was going about his day, carrying her rescued carnations to whatever important meetings filled his schedule. The thought made her smile, imagining her humble flowers sitting on some executive's desk, bringing a small piece of beauty into a world that seemed designed to value everything except the things that truly mattered. That evening, Maya climbed the 3 flights of stairs to the apartment she shared with her grandmother, her feet light despite the long day. The building was old and tired, its hallways dim and smelling of cooking oil and other people's lives. But tonight, it felt like home in a way it hadn't for months. "Lynn?" she called as she pushed open the door that never quite latched properly. Her grandmother was sitting in her usual chair by the window, her swollen hands folded carefully in her lap. At 72, Lin Shen had the kind of fragile beauty that spoke of strength worn thin by years of struggle. Her hair was white as fresh snow, pulled back in a simple bun that Maya helped her arrange each morning. Her eyes, dark and bright despite everything, lit up when she saw Maya in the doorway. "How was today, little flower?" Lin asked, using the nickname she had given Maya years ago, back when their biggest worry was whether Maya would remember to do her homework. Maya pulled the crumpled bills from her pocket and spread them on the small table between them. $27, she said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "Someone bought my flowers, Lin. Someone actually wanted them." Lin's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. "Of course they did. You have a gift, Maya. You see beauty where others see only waste." and you share that gift with the world. That takes courage. Maya knelt beside her grandmother's chair, resting her head against Lynn's knee the way she had as a small child. "We can get your medicine tomorrow," she said. "And groceries. Real groceries, not just rice and whatever vegetables are marked down at the market." Lynn's hand found Maya's hair, stroking it with the gentleness of someone who understood that love was sometimes the only currency that mattered. "Tell me about this person who bought your flowers," she said. "What were they like?" Maya closed her eyes, remembering Daniel's kind voice, the way he had looked at her. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Flowers as if they were valuable rather than pathetic. "Different," she said finally. "He saw me, Lynn. He really saw me." 3 floors below them, Mrs. Rodriguez was watching television with the volume turned up too loud, as she did every night. 2 floors above, the Johnson family was arguing about money, their voices carrying through the thin walls like smoke through cracks. But, in apartment 3B, Maya and Lynn sat together in comfortable silence, counting their small fortune and planning for tomorrow, with the cautious hope of people who had learned not to expect too much from life but couldn't quite stop dreaming anyway. The next morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of dampness that seemed to seep into your bones and stay there. Maya woke before her alarm, as she always did, her body trained by necessity to function on minimal sleep and maximum determination. Lynn was still sleeping, her breathing soft and even in the pale light filtering through their single window. Maya dressed quietly, pulling on the same clothes she had worn the day before because they were the warmest things she owned. She made instant coffee with water heated in their ancient microwave and counted out the money from yesterday's sales, setting aside enough for Lynn's prescription and groceries, saving the rest in the coffee tin for emergencies that seemed to come more often than not. The walk to Meridian Tower felt different this morning. Maya found herself looking forward to standing on that corner, to arranging her flowers and hoping for another encounter with kindness. She had stopped at the florist's dumpster again, finding a collection of roses that were just past their prime, their red petals starting to drop but their beauty still intact for those willing to see it. She set up her cardboard stand in the same spot as before, arranging the roses with the careful attention her grandmother had taught her to give to everything worth doing well. The morning rush began its familiar rhythm around her, a river of people flowing toward their destinations with purpose she envied. Daniel Blackwood emerged from the building at exactly 8:15, just as he had every weekday for the past month. He was carrying a folder of documents that required his signature and thinking about the board meeting scheduled for 10 o'clock when he saw Maya setting up her flower stand. Something in his chest loosened at the sight of her, this small figure bringing beauty to a corner of the world that rarely paused to notice such things. Yesterday, after he had bought her flowers, Daniel had found himself thinking about Maya throughout the day. The carnations had indeed ended up on his desk, where they sat next to his computer monitor like a reminder of something he couldn't quite name. His assistant had asked about them, and Daniel had simply said they were a gift, not elaborating on the circumstances because he wasn't sure he could explain the impulse that had made him stop and buy flowers from a girl with hope in her eyes. "Good morning, Maya," he said as he approached her stand. Maya looked up, surprised that he remembered her name, that he had come back at all. "Good morning, Daniel. I have roses today," she said, gesturing to her display with shy pride. Daniel examined the roses, noting the care with which she had arranged them despite their obvious origins. "They're beautiful. I think I need something cheerful for my office today." He selected a bouquet and handed Maya another $20 bill, watching her face light up with gratitude that made his chest tight with something that might have been shame. $20 was nothing to him, less than he spent on coffee in a typical day. But to Maya it represented possibility, hope, maybe even survival. "Daniel," Maya said softly as he prepared to leave. "Thank you. I mean, really thank you. You don't know what this means." Daniel paused, looking at this girl who thanked him for the simple act of treating her like a human being, and felt something shift inside him. "Maya," he said, "how old are you?" 17, she replied, lifting her chin as if daring him to judge her for being on the street instead of in school. "Shouldn't you be in class?" Maya's expression shuddered, the openness replaced by wariness. "I graduated early," she said, which was true in the technical sense that she had earned her GED after dropping out to help support her grandmother. "I don't have anywhere else I need to be." Daniel sensed there was more to the story, but he didn't push. Instead, he simply nodded and said, "Well, I'm glad you're here. You make this corner a better place." For the next 2 weeks, their morning routine continued. Daniel would emerge from Meridian Tower at 8:15, sometimes from the front entrance, sometimes from the side door, always making his way to Maya's flower stand with the reliability of sunrise. He bought flowers every day, always paying far more than she asked, always treating her with the kind of respect that made Maya stand a little taller and smile a little brighter. Maya began to look forward to these brief encounters with an intensity that surprised her. Daniel was unlike anyone she had ever met, not because he was wealthy or important, but because he seemed to see her as something more than a problem to be solved or ignored. He asked about her flowers, remembered details from their previous conversations, and spoke to her as if her thoughts and opinions mattered. On a Thursday morning thick with autumn fog, Maya arrived at her usual corner to find a police officer waiting beside her spot. Her heart sank like a stone dropped in deep water. She had been waiting for this, the inevitable moment when someone with authority would decide she was a nuisance that needed to be removed. "You can't sit up here anymore," the officer said, his voice not unkind but firm. "We've had complaints. This is private property, and you don't have a permit." Maya's hands tightened around her box of flowers, today a collection of sunflowers whose faces were turned toward a sun they couldn't see through the gray morning. "Please," she said, hating the way her voice cracked. "I'm not hurting anyone. I just need to sell these flowers." "I'm sorry, kid, but rules are rules. You'll have to find somewhere else." Maya nodded, blinking back tears that she refused to let fall in front of this stranger in uniform. She had known this moment would come, had prepared herself for it every morning as she walked to this corner that had become her lifeline. But preparation didn't make the reality any less devastating. She was packing up her flowers when Daniel appeared, emerging from the building's side entrance as he always did. He took in the scene immediately. Maya, with her box of flowers, the police officer standing with his arms crossed, the defeated slump of her shoulders that told the whole story without words. "Is there a problem here?" Daniel asked, and Maya noticed that his voice carried a different quality than usual, something that made the police officer straighten slightly. "Just moving along someone who shouldn't be here," the officer replied. "No vendors allowed without permits." Daniel looked at Maya, saw the tears she was fighting not to shed, and made a decision that would change both their lives. "Officer, this young lady has permission to be here. She's providing flowers for our lobby display." The officer frowned, clearly skeptical. "And you are?" "Daniel Blackwood. I own this building." The words hung in the air between them like the morning fog, heavy with implications that Maya was still processing. Daniel Blackwood. The Daniel who had been buying her flowers for 2 weeks owned Meridian Tower. He was that CEO, the one whose name was etched in brass letters in the building's lobby, whose face occasionally appeared in the business section of newspapers she sometimes found in park benches. The police officer's demeanor changed immediately, professional courtesy replacing casual authority. "Mr. Blackwood, I wasn't aware that this was an authorized arrangement. I'll make a note in my report." After the officer left, Maya stood on the sidewalk holding her box of sunflowers and staring at Daniel with something approaching awe. "You own this building," she said, as if saying it aloud might make it make sense. "I do," Daniel confirmed, his voice gentle. "I should have mentioned it earlier, but it didn't seem important." "Didn't seem important?" Maya's voice pitched higher with disbelief. "You're a millionaire who's been buying flowers from a girl on the street, and you didn't think it was important to mention that you could buy every flower shop in the city without even checking your bank balance?" Daniel winced at the bitterness in her tone, recognizing that his well-intentioned omission had been a mistake. "Maya, I bought your flowers because they were beautiful and because you needed someone to buy them. My bank balance doesn't change either of those facts." Maya set down her box and looked at him with eyes that held too much knowledge for someone 17 years old. "Everything changes," she said quietly. "Rich people don't buy flowers from poor girls unless they want something or they're feeling guilty about something. Which is it?" The accusation hit Daniel harder than it should have. Perhaps because there was truth in it he hadn't wanted to acknowledge. "Neither," he said. "Maybe I just wanted to help." "Help?" Maya repeated the word, like it tasted bitter. "You want to help? Then tell me why someone like you is slumming it on the sidewalk with someone like me, instead of writing a check to charity and calling it good." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, considering her question and his own motivations with an honesty that made him uncomfortable. "Because checks to charity are easy," he said finally. "And you reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That the most important things can't be bought. They have to be noticed, appreciated, protected. Your flowers, your determination, your dignity, in the face of people who treat you like you're invisible. That's worth more than anything I could write a check for." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity, for the patronizing smile that usually accompanied such words from people in expensive suits. But Daniel's expression was serious, almost vulnerable, as if her opinion of him mattered more than it should. "I don't need your pity," she said, but the words lacked the heat they had carried a moment before. "Good," Daniel replied, "because I don't have any to give. What I have is respect for someone who gets up every morning and finds a way to make something beautiful out of things other people have thrown away." Maya felt her anger deflating like a punctured balloon, leaving behind a confusion that was somehow worse. It would have been easier if Daniel had been the kind of wealthy person she could hate, the kind who treated poverty like a personal failing and charity like a tax deduction, but he wasn't, and that made everything more complicated. "I should go," she said, reaching for her box of flowers. "Find somewhere else to set up before the morning rush is over." "Maya, wait." Daniel's voice stopped her. "I meant what I told the officer about the lobby display. We could use some fresh flowers in the building, and I'd rather buy them from you than from some overpriced florist who doesn't put half the care into arranging them that you do." Maya turned back to face him, hope and suspicion warring in her expression. "You don't have to do that. I can find another corner." "I know I don't have to. I want to. The question is whether you'll let me." Maya looked at Daniel, this man who owned buildings and companies, but bought flowers from a homeless girl with gentleness instead of condescension. She thought about her grandmother waiting at home, about the pills they couldn't afford, and the rent that was always due too soon. She thought about dignity and pride and the luxury of being able to refuse help when you didn't really need it. "Okay," she said quietly, "but I pay for the flowers myself, and I arrange them myself. And if anyone asks, I'm an independent contractor, not a charity case." Daniel smiled, and Maya noticed that it reached his eyes in a way that made him look younger, less like a CEO, and more like a person. "Deal," he said. "Welcome to Meridian Corporation, Maya Chen." As Maya followed Daniel into the building she had been standing outside for weeks, she felt like Alice falling down the rabbit hole, except the wonderland she found herself in was made of marble floors and crystal chandeliers instead of talking cats and mad hatters. The lobby was enormous, its ceiling stretching up 3 stories and filled with natural light from windows that seemed impossibly large. People in expensive clothes moved through the space with purpose, their heels clicking against the polished floor in a rhythm that spoke of important places to be and important things to do. Daniel led her to a circular table in the center of the lobby, currently empty except for a small placard that read, "Meridian Corporation, building tomorrow's solutions today." Maya set down her box of sunflowers and looked around at the space, trying to imagine her rescued flowers in this temple to success and ambition. "I was thinking something cheerful here," Daniel said, gesturing to the table. "Something that would make people smile when they walk in." Maya knelt beside her box and began arranging the sunflowers, their bright faces a stark contrast to the sophisticated grays and blues of the lobby's decor. She worked with the same careful attention she had always given to her flowers, but now she was conscious of the people passing by, of the conversations that stopped mid-sentence as they noticed her presence in this space where she clearly didn't belong. "Those are beautiful," a woman's voice said behind her. Maya turned to see an elegantly dressed woman in her 50s, her silver hair perfectly styled and her smile genuinely warm. "I'm Catherine Morrison, Daniel's assistant. He told me we'd be having fresh flowers in the lobby now." Maya stood and wiped her hands on her jacket, suddenly aware of how out of place she must look. "I'm Maya. I hope they're okay for this space. I know they're not exactly professional." Catherine moved closer to examine the arrangement, and Maya held her breath, waiting for polite criticism disguised as helpful suggestions. Instead, Catherine's smile widened. "They're perfect," she said. "We've had silk flowers and expensive arrangements from the florist down the street, but they never had any life to them. These have personality." Over the next hour, Maya found herself the center of more attention than she had received in her entire life. Employees stopped to admire her flowers, to ask where they had come from, to comment on how much brighter the lobby looked. A few asked questions about her background that she deflected with practiced skill, but most simply appreciated the beauty she had brought to their workplace. Daniel watched from across the lobby, ostensibly reviewing documents on his tablet, but actually observing Maya's interactions with his employees. He noticed how she stood a little straighter with each compliment, how her smile became more natural as people responded to her work with genuine appreciation. He also noticed the looks some people gave her when they thought she wasn't watching, the way certain employees' expressions shifted when they took in her clothes and realized she wasn't one of them. At noon, Daniel approached Maya as she was making final adjustments to her arrangement. "How do you feel about lunch?" he asked. Maya glanced around the lobby, suddenly aware that she had been here for 3 hours and hadn't sold a single flower to anyone except the man who owned the building. "I should probably go," she said. "Find some other customers, make some money for the day." "Actually," Daniel said, "I was thinking we could discuss a more permanent arrangement. Over lunch, if you're interested." Maya's hands stilled on the sunflower stems. "What kind of permanent arrangement?" "The kind where you don't have to worry about police officers or finding new corners to stand on. The kind where you have a guaranteed customer who appreciates what you do." Maya looked at Daniel, trying to read the expression on his face, trying to understand what he was really offering and what it would cost her in return. "I am not a charity case," she said again, because it seemed important to keep saying it. "No," Daniel agreed. "You're a businesswoman with a product I want to buy. The only question is whether we can work out terms that make sense for both of us." Maya considered this, weighing the promise of security against the voice in her head that warned her about gifts that seemed too good to be true. "Lunch," she said finally. "But somewhere I can afford to pay for my own meal." Daniel's smile was understanding rather than condescending. "I know just the place." The diner Daniel chose was nothing like the restaurants Maya had imagined a CEO would frequent. It was small and warm and filled with the kind of people who worked with their hands for a living, who understood that sometimes a cup of coffee and a sandwich was a luxury worth savoring. Maya relaxed as soon as they walked through the door, the smell of grilled onions and fresh coffee wrapping around her like a familiar embrace. They sat in a booth by the window, where Maya could watch the street outside, and Daniel could observe the way she seemed to breathe easier in this environment that didn't judge her for her secondhand clothes or her carefully counted coins. "Tell me about yourself," Daniel said after they had ordered. Maya a grilled cheese sandwich and soup, Daniel the same because it seemed wrong to order something more expensive when she was being so careful with money. "What do you want to know?" Maya asked, wariness creeping back into her voice. "Whatever you want to tell me. Where you're from, how you got started with the flowers, what you want to do with your life besides stand on street corners." Maya stirred her soup, watching the steam rise from the bowl while she decided how much truth to share with this man who seemed kind, but who lived in a world so different from hers that they might as well be different species. "I live with my grandmother," she said finally. "She raised me after my parents died. She used to be a seamstress, but her hands don't work so well anymore, and the medical bills are expensive. The flowers help, but it's not enough." "It's never enough." Daniel nodded, not offering platitudes or easy solutions, just listening with the kind of attention that made Maya feel like her words mattered. "The flowers came from necessity," she continued. "I saw all this beauty being thrown away, and I thought maybe someone would want it if it was presented nicely, if someone took care of it." I was right, mostly. People do want beauty, they just don't always know where to look for it. And what do you want? Daniel asked. If money wasn't an issue, if you could do anything, what would it be? Maya was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the people passing by on the sidewalk. I want to go to college, she said eventually. I want to study business, learn how to run a company, how to make decisions that matter. I want to create something that lasts, something that helps people the way my grandmother helped people with her sewing. Daniel felt something shift in his chest, recognition of a hunger he remembered from his own youth. When everything seemed possible, and the future stretched out like an unmapped country waiting to be explored. What if I told you that was possible? He said. Maya looked at him with the skepticism of someone who had learned not to trust promises from adults. I'd ask what you wanted in return. Fair enough. What I want is for you to work for Meridian Corporation. Not charity work. Not some made-up position to make me feel good about myself. Real work, with real responsibilities and real pay. Doing what? I don't have any experience, any training. I don't even have decent clothes for an office job. You have something more valuable than experience, Daniel said. You have vision. You see potential where others see waste. You create beauty from things other people have given up on. Those are exactly the skills we need in our customer relations department. Maya set down her spoon, her soup forgotten. You're offering me a job, a real job. I'm offering you an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you. The salary would be enough to support yourself and your grandmother comfortably, with benefits that would cover her medical expenses. There would also be tuition assistance if you wanted to take night classes, work toward that business degree you mentioned. Maya felt tears threatening again, but this time they were tears of possibility rather than despair. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for someone you barely know? Daniel was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully because he sensed that his words would matter more than he could possibly explain. Because 5 years ago, I was standing in a cemetery burying my wife, he said finally. Cancer. She fought it for 2 years, and I threw every resource I had at the best doctors, the most expensive treatments, the most promising experimental therapies. None of it mattered in the end. Maya's expression softened, understanding flooding her features. After she died, I threw myself into work because it was easier than dealing with the grief. I built the company bigger, made more money, accumulated more success, as if any of that could fill the hole she left behind. And somewhere along the way, I forgot why any of it mattered. Daniel paused, looking out the window at the street where people hurried past each other without really seeing, each lost in their own struggles and dreams. Then I met a girl who took discarded flowers and turned them into something beautiful, who stood on a street corner with dignity and hope, despite having every reason to give up. And I remembered that the most important things in life aren't the things you can buy or build or accumulate. They're the moments when you choose to see beauty instead of waste, when you choose to help instead of walking past, when you choose to believe that tomorrow might be better than today. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, not caring that she was crying in a public place in front of a man she had known for less than a month. Your wife, she said. What was her name? Sarah Elizabeth Blackwood. She would have liked you, I think. She always said the most interesting people were the ones who had learned to find joy, despite their circumstances. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, two people from different worlds who had found common ground in loss and hope, and the strange alchemy that transforms strangers into something approaching family. I'll take the job, Maya said finally, but I have conditions. Daniel smiled. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. I want to keep doing the flowers, not just for your lobby, but maybe for other businesses too. Build it into something real, something that creates jobs for other people like me. Consider it done. We can even provide startup funding if you need it. And I want to pay back every penny you spend on me. The salary, the tuition assistance, everything. I don't want charity, even if it comes with good intentions. Maya, that's not necessary. It is to me, she interrupted. I need to know that I earned this, that I'm not just some pet project for a guilty rich man. Daniel nodded, understanding that her pride was as much a part of her as her kindness, that taking it away would diminish the very qualities that had drawn him to help her in the first place. "Agreed," he said, "but I reserve the right to give you Christmas bonuses that you're not allowed to pay back." Maya laughed, the sound bright and genuine in the warm air of the diner. "I think I can live with that." Outside the window, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, casting everything in golden light that made even the busy street look beautiful. Maya thought about her grandmother waiting at home, about the phone call she would make that evening to share news that would change both their lives. She thought about college applications and business plans, and a future that suddenly seemed not just possible but probable. And in the reflection of the window, she caught sight of herself sitting across from Daniel Blackwood, CEO and flower customer, benefactor and home friend, and realized that sometimes the most beautiful flowers bloom in the most unexpected places. 3 years later, Maya Chen stood in the lobby of Meridian Tower, no longer a girl with a cardboard box, but a young woman in a tailored blazer, watching her team arrange fresh flowers throughout the building. Chen's Blooming Solutions had contracts with 15 downtown buildings now, employing 12 people who had once stood on street corners like she had. Her grandmother Lynn sat in the comfortable chair by their new apartment window, hands still gentle but heart finally at peace. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.